Hey there, welcome to another episode of the podcast. In this episode, I will be speaking with Dorna, who is the founder of Gavel, and we will be talking about the new AI-powered tool called Gavel Exec. We will talk about how it helps lawyers streamline contract redlining and negotiation all inside of Microsoft Word, how it's being used by both law firms and in-house legal teams, and why this kind of technology is likely to become a standard part of legal practice in the near future. But before we dive in, a quick word from our sponsor. If you are a lawyer or a small firm owner, like many of our listeners, you know how hard it is to constantly juggle intake, incoming calls, and actual billable work. That's why I use and recommend Smith AI to handle calls 24/7, to screen leads, schedule consultations, and integrate everything into operational systems. So I never miss an opportunity, even when I'm deep inside of whatever work I'm doing. Same for you. And right now, listeners of this podcast can get $100 off any new paid plan. Just follow the link in the show notes, grab that discount. It's Ernie 100, Ernie 100, and that will get you the discount. All right, with that out of the way, let's welcome Dorna into the podcast. Hey, Dorna, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Ernie. It's wonderful to be here again with
Yeah.
you, but for the first time on your podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about this because I know how good you are at explaining things. You are an intersection of where lawyers need information about technology. They also need to believe that they can do things. And I think your whole story of how you got to where you got to is just one I find to be very inspiring. So why don't you tell us your story so that the listener knows what you did and who you are and all that good stuff.
Amazing. Wonderful. Yes, I would love to. So I am a former attorney. I practiced for almost a decade. I was last at Sidley Austin, and I was actually a litigator in my practice, but I wanted to build technology for a very specific area of my practice that I did pro bono. So it was for domestic violence survivors. This is not what we do anymore directly,
Mhm.
but I wanted to build technology to expedite some of these pro bono cases that I was taking on in the domestic violence space. At the time, there was really not a ton of out of the box legal technology out there. And so what I did is I basically had a friend of mine who was an engineer, hired him to help me build something sort of like TurboTax, but for domestic violence law. So we built this tool, we launched it, we were using it with consumers, we were using it within the firm, we were using it with the legal aid organizations that we were working with. And it started to just take off where all of these organizations, all these different groups wanted to use it more and more. And we started to hear from other attorneys in other areas of law that they wanted to build similar tools. So fast forward, what we ended up doing was building Gavel, Gavel Workflows, which is sort of our first and core product right now. And
Mhm.
Gavel Workflows is a rules-based automation system, document automation system, in which you can come in, build out end-to-end intake processes that lead into generating the most complex versions of your documents.
Mhm.
And that really it's a software platform that anyone can use to automate inside of their firm. And then over time, we have grown that, expanded that, and also added on another product, which I'd love to talk about in a little bit more detail today, Gavel Exec. And Gavel Exec is our AI Copilot directly inside of Microsoft Word, and it helps with everything that's sort of like after the first draft. So Gavel
Mhm.
Workflows is our get views to the first draft, and Gavel Exec
Mhm.
is for everything that comes after that and all the creative thinking and the partner that you need to redline, negotiate, and draft clauses and entire agreements.
Oh, okay. So that's a lot to unpack for me because I want to get to Gavel Exec, but I also want to ask you. You said you got a developer friend to do this. Did you have zero connection? You've never programmed. You didn't ever take a programming course or anything like that?
Well, so I lived in San Francisco at the time, which at the time was like the hub for everyone who was an engineer, whereas now I think that's expanded to, every single city has so many engineers in it. But so I had a lot of friends who were engineers. And in the early days, I will say it's they always say like you shouldn't, if you're not an engineer, you really shouldn't do too much in the code base
Right.
starting a company, but I think I did a little too much in the code base in the very early days. So I did get a little bit involved But I do not have any training or background in code, and now I don't dabble with it at all. I leave
Yeah.
that to the experts.
I'm not surprised because I took a programming course when I was in college a bunch of years ago, and it was Fortran. You had to use punch cards. It was a whole, and I was a philosophy major, so I was totally fish out of water. But I was curious about computers, and that was the closest thing I could do to understand it. And what I took away from that experience and subsequent ones where I tried to code was that there's a rigor to the thought process that happens with coding that is similar to what lawyers do, but it's more exact, in coding. Like you get a comma out of place, at least in the early days of coding, it's game over. And I just wondered if you
Also,
had
potentially
that
in
experience.
legal areas, you got to get a comma out
Yeah.
of place.
Yeah, yeah, it can right, right. But so like in terms of the workflow automation, even though you're not using code for that, to me that's sort of like flow charting in coding. Like you go, okay, if this happens, and we go here, that happens. And I think lawyers don't think that that's going on in their own brains, but it is to some extent. It could be maybe happening better if you thought about like the formalism of logic and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that I just wanted to make sure I understood. So you truly got into this in a very improbable way. All right. So you have Gavel Workflows, which we have talked about with my inner circle group, and we can have another podcast about that. And I'm sure we'll talk about it anyway. But tell us about Gavel Exec. Like, what is the problem that this is solving that you think other tools are missing or not dealing with adequately?
Yeah. So, what led us to go into this space is that with Gavel workflows, we really get you to the first draft. So, no matter how complex, let's say, some of the most popular areas that we have are these transactional areas like corporate, the wide variety of documents you might have in corporate legal areas, and then real estate transactional. So those are two very popular areas for us. And what a lot of our customers were saying is that we build our first draft of our documents with Gavel workflows. So maybe it's an entire set of financing documents. But after that, we need an AI tool or something that will help us more rapidly execute on redlining, negotiation, and sometimes playbook based redrafting of a document that you might get from a third party or that maybe has come back to you from a third party. And so they were
Mm,
starting to look at other tools and seeing what was out there, but they were bringing this problem to us and kind of sharing with us that nothing that they had found out there in the world was getting them to be able to accept almost every single suggestion.
mm,
And they didn't feel like there was a lot that was built by deal lawyers who really understood how the systems worked, how the deals worked, what is market standard, what is not, how surgical do those red lines and how tight do those red lines need to be. And so we decided to take a stab at this and put out some very early versions of this late last year where we involved some of our customers and sort of ran by them some of the early scenarios. And because our whole team is lawyers and engineers, and we really, really deeply understand this area, and because we worked with a lot of our attorney customers to build this, I think we were starting to get really, really good results. And there are some heavy hitters in the legal AI space, and our customers were starting to tell us, like, what you've built so far is better than some of the things that we've tried from companies that have been around trying to do things to do legal AI for several years. And so
mm,
we really started to put a lot more focus and attention on this. And one of the things we did is we don't use or train on any of the data from our own customers, but we actually engaged two different law firms to help us with the training data. So
mm,
both with with three things, with the training data set, with helping us to determine what is a good red line, what is not a good red line, what's a good edit, what's not a good edit, and then
mm,
also to develop a bunch of playbooks. So for a variety of different legal documents, we actually have out of the box playbooks that you can use to
mm.
determine what is market standard for your document. And those are the things that I think have led to a lot of our customers wanting to stay with the platform and choose us, even though this is a little bit of a competitive space right now.
Mhm. Let's talk about your users. So who would you say currently is, your ideal user, the person for whom this product resonates the most strongly?
Yeah. So most of our customers with Gavel Exec are a variety of transactional areas, but mostly corporate and real estate are
Mhm,
the biggest areas. And then they're mostly at small and mid-sized firms, although we have a lot of large firms on the platform as well. But one of the areas we're also starting to gain a lot of traction in is in-house teams. And what's really interesting is that we make Gavel Exec shareable. So if you build something in Gavel, if you build, give it access to your documents or you build a playbook, you can actually share that with anyone else on your team, but you can also share that with your customers, with your clients. So let's say you have a law firm who's representing some in-house team, you can actually share those playbooks or those projects, so that's like set of knowledge that you built
Hmm.
with your clients so that they can use it as well. And that has been a really great method for our law firm customers to really form deeper alliances with their customers who maybe were never going to them for those types of documents in the first place. They're coming to them for the deals, but they're not maybe going to them for every single vendor agreement or every single NDA that comes across their desk. So it's helping them
Hmm.
form better alliances, but it's also really we had not been as much in the in-house legal space before, and now we've seen like half of our customers on Gavel Exec coming in and signing up for Gavel Exec specifically from the in-house space.
That's really interesting. The communal aspect, the collaborative part. How do you see that evolving? Do you envision like a template marketplace or anything like that?
Yeah, so interestingly, when you talk about templates, like we do have a template marketplace on our Gavel Workflows product, but with our Gavel Exec product, it's more about applying standards. So in a way, it is like a template that you can create for yourself. We're not creating the marketplace, but our customers are. So, for example, we have many customers who have created playbooks for things like vendor agreements or NDAs or data protection agreements that they then share with their customers, and those customers can run them over and over again on those very repetitive deal documents or
Hmm.
contract types that they're not taking to the law firm in the first place because it's like too expensive. It's cost prohibitive for them to do that. So, in a way, a lot of our customers are actually building these sort of legal products that they're able to then share with their customers. And
Hmm.
interestingly, there are a lot of parallels between what they're doing with Gavel Exec and what our customers are doing on Gavel Workflows with actual templates, like full time templates of documents. So, yeah, definitely.
So thinking about the difference between solo small firm lawyers and big firm lawyers don't care about money because some, committee approves it and that's that. But in the solo, very small firm, they're worried about costs. So what does something like Gavel Exec cost the small firms or anybody really? What's the pricing structure?
Yeah, so our price is 160 a month per user, and it's 145 a month per user if you go on the annual plan. And then as you go above 10 seats, we give further discounts for additional users as well. Yeah, so
Okay,
I would say
that's reasonable.
on the more affordable, reasonable side of legal tech tools that are out there.
No, definitely, definitely. Some of them get up there in the multiple hundreds of dollars. All right, so Gavel Exec integrates into Word, I think you said, which does not surprise me. That makes sense. Most people are using Word. If you're going to be drafting and revising and redlining, that's probably going to be happening in Word. Did you ever give any thought to doing it not in Word, or was it just so obvious that that's where it has to happen?
It's funny, this has been an age-old question for us from the beginning of our first product of do we build outside of Word? Because even our first product has it has a Word add-in that you can use if you'd like to. And we think about this all the time, and I think the answer we keep coming back to is that most lawyers are not coming off of Word. We do every once in a while get these lawyers who are like, "Oh, can you build a Google Docs add-in?" But for the most part, lawyers are in Word. And particularly for these transactional areas where you're negotiating back and forth, track changes are just the standard because Google Docs doesn't, it sends like notifications to the other party when you make changes to the document. So we've stuck in Word. We are building some in-browser functionality as well. But for the most part, the features that the customer is using the most are the Word add-in features, and they directly integrate with everything that you'd wanna do with Word, whether that's actual track changes, whether that's the comment bubbles, all the formatting, all of.
So Gavel Exec will help with redlining, and tell me a little bit about what the nuts and bolts experience is like when you're using Gavel Exec and redlining and collaborating and so forth.
Yes. So the primary you have a few ways of interacting with it. One is you can just prompt it. So you can prompt it to do anything. You can say, redline this document, summarize the risks in this document, give me an email about this document. You can ask it to point to specific clauses that you're looking for. So that's just like general prompting. There's really so much you can do. You can summarize all the red lines that already exist inside of the document. But where it becomes really, really powerful is one with the market standards that we built into the system. So we have understood for a lot of these areas in corporate and many transactional areas, what is market standard for this type of document. So you can go with our benchmarks or you can load your own document set. So we have the ability to load as many of the documents from your own database as you'd like and give it context of
Mm,
how you like to draft, types of clauses you like to include. It gives you almost like a pseudo clause library without you having to copy and paste a bunch of things into a clause library. And then it gives you the
mm,
ability to query it to get better results in your negotiation. So I'll make that a little bit more concrete with an example. We have a customer who represents a ton of startups in early financing for financing deals. And so what they've done is they are very often interfacing against the same venture capital firms over and over again. And what they had thought in the past is like, I wish I could just go look at all the agreements that I had against let's call it XYZ Ventures, and see what are the most favorable provisions they've ever agreed to, because then I can actually point to their own document. I can say, you agreed to this, last year on this deal with another client of ours. So
mm.
that's why we think you should agree to it. That's the best way to give a reason here on why it's market
Right.
standard. Don't take Gavel's word for it. Take your own document's word for it. So what they've done is they've created that. They already had that folder. So they just connected that all into Gavel Exec. And now right now we call them projects. So they go into the XYZ Ventures project and they say, what are the most favorable terms that XYZ Ventures has ever agreed to, either throughout the entire agreement, just redline the whole thing, or on this particular provision. And it can now give them really accurate red lines. It can give them, it can point to specific clauses. It is very, very powerful in giving them the results. So it all really comes back to, it's not just, efficiencies, obviously AI is going to save you some time. But really, where I think the true power comes from is you're able to make decisions and make points that make sense and that you're going to win with at the end of the day because you have the data and analytics to back it up. And you never would have sat there and like read through every agreement that you have on your entire share file for the past like 10 years.
Yeah, realistically, that's not happening. So yeah, definitely AI has saved time. It also lowers cognitive burden, the mental strain of combing through things. So you can use that mental energy elsewhere. The number one thing I guess people are going to want to know about is how do you ensure validity of the things that it pulls out, avoid the hallucination problem, wherever that might creep in. How do you deal with that?
Yes, definitely. That's constantly something that we're working with more and more. Obviously, these are AI models. It's not like rules-based automation where if you give it a certain input, it's always going to give you an exact certain output. May sometimes make mistakes, although we are working incredibly hard to make sure that happens as little as possible. Obviously, we
Hmm.
think we have a sort of an apply all feature where you can have it edit your document altogether, but typically what a lot of our customers do is they go through and they look at every change and they decide whether or not they want to approve it. And additionally, with our playbooks feature, which is you giving it a bunch of rules that it then scans your document to tell you if those rules are met or not, that also gets you further away from the potential for hallucinations because you have a combination of this like sort of rules-based system plus AI that is helping you identify those issues in your documents and then identify what the best way to solve them is. So we're, but one of the ways that we definitely, well, two of the main ways that we do that is one, the context data that we give it. So we've given it access to a ton of really great legal documents that lawyers that we have worked with, that we've engaged for this purpose, have given us in order to train the system. And then two is every single time that there is a new model or there is a change that we make to our system, we have a team of lawyers reviewing and seeing what are the results, How are they different from what we were doing already that's already live with our customers? And how can we make sure that the benchmarks only get higher and higher? So hallucination rates go down, the places that we're marking up that shouldn't be marked up go down, the things that we're not catching go down so that we're making sure that we catch all those issues. We have a bunch of metrics internally that we're.
Mm. Well, for lawyers who are listening, I would say what I usually say about these kind of tools is that you should be running your own R&D department, which is operating inside your head. And the best way to understand this tool, and at this point, if I were practicing, I would have said to myself, okay, it's not that expensive. I'm not going to be tied into a long-term contract. The best way for me to understand it is to go, get a demo and then sign up and start using it. And when you start using it, you'll understand a lot about it and you'll see where you could improve. I mean, it fits in the category of general AI tools. So I know when you say, you have to check it, that's true of all AI tools. Lawyers shouldn't be trusting anything, including machines, to do all their work. If they could do all the work, then you wouldn't have a job. So
Including your junior
it's good.
associate. Hopefully you check
Yeah.
that work too.
Yeah. You need to check everything. So what do you think, speaking of AI in general, what do you think the biggest misconception that many lawyers have, those who are not using it maybe as much or at all, have about AI that you run into or you see as an observer?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think that a lot of the people we talk to are worried about is that it's all just about cutting the time that they're spending inside of their drafts and cutting the time that they're doing lawyering, and that it's going to do away with our jobs. And I mean, the reality is, yes, there are certain things that we're going to be doing less of and that we're going to be spending less time on. But I think that it's going to allow us to focus on the pieces of the work that we want to focus on most. And it's actually enabling us to do better work. So we're now able to do some analysis, like we were talking about. We're able to do some analysis that we were never able to do in the past. And so it's not just about positioning yourself at the forefront of technology for your customers from the perspective of, oh, I'm going to spend less time on your work, but it's actually about results. You're going to get better results if you have a system that you have really actually assisted in learning your style and your preferences and what you believe is market standard. It's going to help you catch mistakes that you would have made before. It's going to help you draft clauses in the way that's the best for your client. It's going to help you sort of like get over. I mean, I know I've experienced this, that like sort of like writer's block that you have
Mhm.
when you want to modify something, but you don't know exactly how you want to modify it. And a lot of these practice areas are going towards alternative fee models anyway. And so it's actually a way for you to build a more profitable firm. It's not all doomsday lawyers are gone and there's not going to be any work
Right,
left for us scenario.
right. Yeah, it's funny. Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn fame and also PayPal Mafia fame, smart guy, knows a lot about AI. Recently, I think it was on LinkedIn and elsewhere, he posted a short observation about all of this kind of thing and people saying, oh, AI is going to take all our jobs or AI is going to ruin everything. And he said, he had taken a bunch of different models and used them simultaneously for different things to just kind of compare what they could do in terms of helping him think through solutions to problems. And he said they're great at identifying consensus. They're not great at outside the box thinking. That was his representation, which, I think feels true to me, but he has more experience than I do. And his point was, and he even said, it's not going to change what lawyers do if what they're doing is thinking really well about how to solve this problem in a unique way that is required to be unique. If you're just, phoning it in and you're just slapping things on like, assembly line, then yeah, it is going to disrupt that. Does that feel true to you as well?
Definitely. And I think this actually brings up sort of like a related point too of how you're using the AI. So I think there are lawyers that I've talked to who say, I've tried AI, whether it's legal AI or just general AI, and it just doesn't work. And when I dig in a little bit deeper, I come to realize that they've like typed in like 3 words into a chat prompt and then they were like, the results were terrible and it didn't give me exactly
Mhm.
what I wanted. But sort of think back on what you would do for an associate that you're hiring. You wouldn't just give them like 3 words of an instruction. you would try to
Right.
train them. They are a
Right.
blank slate, they're willing to learn and think of your AI in the same way. It's willing to learn, but it's a little bit of a blank slate in some ways, and you need to guide it. You need to give it as much information as possible, and the more that you train these systems, really the better they get. The results are going to get better. It's going to understand what you like, because we at Gavel, we think about this all the time. It's like we can build what we think is the best legal AI system and that is perfect for one lawyer, but it might be terrible for another lawyer. So it's really about you taking the slate that you have and really giving it as much context and information as possible to turn it into the system that can help you the best.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it for me is rewiring my brain to not think of it as a thing that I ask it questions only, which it's very good at, and obviously has to check things. But sometimes it's helpful to say, look, I'm brainstorming this. Help me think this through and give me some ideas. And there, hallucination doesn't really come into play because it's just helping you brainstorm and it's not giving you an answer. It's helping you guide your thinking. And I think that's where its power is most prevalent. But it's kind of weird if you've not used AI much. So for the lawyer who's like giving it 3-word questions, they're not going to feel comfortable asking it to assist with brainstorming. But I mean, I don't know. That's what works great for me. I'm sure that works for you too, right?
Definitely. Yeah, the 2 sort of methods that I found that are my favorite with AI, specifically for legal, and really I use it in a lot of ways, but is, 1, my favorite prompt. So my favorite prompt is to tell it, "Be 100 times more specific." So you ask it a question, it gives you an answer, and just dig deeper and drill down even more. That's where I find I get, like, especially when brainstorming, like you were talking about, that's where I get really juicy answers, and I start to sort of understand what my own thought process around something is.
Mm.
And then the second is this concept of like vibe lawyering. You've probably heard about vibe coding, but it's like sort of like we're trying to make the word vibe lawyering happen. We're trying to make fetch happen, as they say. But basically, what you can do is you have it give you a first draft, especially if you're drafting from scratch. Like you have it give you a first draft, and then you go clause by clause, and you sort of ask it, you work with it. You ask it questions about the first clause, and then you go back and you
Hmm.
ask it questions about the second clause, and you ask it to modify. And that's how you're going to get really good results that are in line with what you're looking for as a final draft.
I love that phrase, vibe lawyering. And just today in the inner circle, we were doing a coding session and doing vibe coding. And we got into it because one of the lawyers started using Claude to code something. And she had no interest in coding, but she watched Ali Miller's, intro video. And she's like, oh my God, I coded this thing that a developer was going to charge me $20,000 for. And it was more the feeling of satisfaction that she had that she was able to do this, knowing nothing about coding. And it makes me think about how, yes, non-lawyers, our potential clients, are going to do vibe lawyering, and then they're going to be surprised that they can get an answer to something that they previously could only get from a lawyer. But that's not taking work away from lawyers, because I would rather a client, if are practicing law, I'd rather they come to me having done some research, so that then when I talk to them, I'm not spending time, wasting time on things that are, preliminary that they could figure out on their own. And besides, if they learned it on their own, there's not going to be as much pushback or any pushback when I tell them that's the way it is. What they want from me is an ability to guide them in ways that those, conventional wisdom consensus answers can't guide them, right? So I think the threat is not that non-lawyers are going to start vibe lawyering, but lawyers can vibe lawyer to a higher level, if you will, to, overuse the phrase, because there's a lot of things that I don't know that I could learn quickly when it comes to law. I have used these tools for areas where somebody pointed at something out and I thought, I really need to get up to speed quickly on this. No problem. Go in, I get up to speed. Now, I'm not worried that I'm going to misinterpret or misunderstand because I have decades of experience and my instincts are good with law. But I'd still check some things, obviously. So I think, lawyers who are afraid of all these things, they need to stop being afraid. They need to use them so that they understand what it is they need to be afraid of. And it's usually just complacency, lack of attention, laziness. That's what we need to be afraid of. But this tool that Gavel Exec, powered by AI, sitting inside of Word, do you think that this kind of tool is going to be just the standard one day? Like this is people going to go 20 years from now? Yeah, of course. That's part of practicing law.
I mean, definitely. The way that we are seeing the adoption of Gavel Exec on our end seems like it's just so easy to adopt because especially, this back to your question about Microsoft Word, had we think about how we thought about being outside of Microsoft Word. Our lawyers are already working inside of Microsoft Word, and it's such a seamless integration with the way that they already work, and it provides them such an amplified level of assistance directly inside of the place that they were working that I really can't see that there will be lawyers who, obviously are of the practice areas that this could benefit, who won't be using this in the future. And I think, that is going to continue to transform. And one of the ways that Gavel Exec is transforming more and more that we think is going to be really powerful for our users is the number and level of integrations that you can enable it to have. So,
Mm,
integrating into more of the file management systems, integrating into your email, obviously all per your consent, not just without your consent. But as the more that it has access to, the better results and the better answers it's going to be able to give you on exactly what you want. Like it's going to be able to pull deal information from an email chain that you would have sifted through forever to find and probably not build for in the
mhm,
first place.
mhm.
So yeah, definitely.
Well, that is very exciting. I think look, the changes that are happening in practice law as a result of all these things, to me, is so refreshing. Sometimes I say that the acid test for how good a tool is if it makes me feel like I miss practicing law, or I'd like to go back and try it on for size. And these kind of tools do, because the drudgery, the annoyance factor of these kinds of things was one element that, on top of all the other challenging parts of practicing law, did me in. But when I see these things, I'm like, God, I'd love to try them and have a real use case for it to see how could it change my thinking? How could I find better answers more quickly and improve things, and also mentor other lawyers, right? Like that's also part of it. It's like if I can learn how to use this tool, I can teach other lawyers who are younger coming out who don't know anything about practicing law and say, look, this tool isn't going to replace what you are going to learn, but I can help you learn that faster.
That's a really interesting point you bring up about training too, because that's one of the big concerns that a lot of the lawyers that we work with talk about. They're like, okay, now how am I going to train my junior associates? But in fact, what we've seen with a lot of our customers is they're using, I mentioned the playbooks feature we have inside of
Hmm.
Gavel Exec. So a playbook
Hmm.
allows you to create a set of rules for a certain document type, for example, and you can say, this is what we usually agree to in this agreement. And if it doesn't have this, here are the fallback provisions. And, this is the language we like to use. So those playbooks are actually becoming the best source of training for junior associates with a lot of the firms that we work with, especially the midsize and larger firms who have like a larger group of associates to train. Because now, instead of telling them, like I was told when I was a junior associate, go look on iManage and find all the documents that you could find, and you're sort
Right.
of digging in the dark and you don't know which lawyer was actually the one that's like the gold standard lawyer. Instead, you now have that all inside of an add-in. It's telling you whether the rule failed or passed. It's telling you exactly what the language should be. And it's really training you how to do the work based on the gold standard of what your firm believes is the right way to mark up a document.
Well, I think that is a great place to wrap it up. And I guess the one other thing is I'm going to put a link in the show notes to your website, to Gavel Exec's webpage. Is there anything else people need to know if they're going to check it out, or how would they set up a discovery call, or what do they need to know?
Yes. So we do make it available for anyone to sign up without talking to us. However, we have Gavel from the beginning. We've had excellent customer support and a great customer team. So you can book as many calls with us as you'd like. But there is a link there to book a demo, so you can get on a call with our team. We can walk you through all the different features. We also have a lot of resources you can use if you prefer to use it on your own. And then I'd love to give a special promo code for your users of 50% off the first month for anyone who tells us they came from Ernie's.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, great. Well, I'll put all the links in there in the show notes. I definitely recommend everyone here follow Dorna on LinkedIn, because and Instagram. I guess you put out videos that are just wonderful in explaining a lot of important basic tech concepts, and you do a really, really good job of this. So, a lot of free good information from Dorna out there. I'll put a link in to your LinkedIn page as well. But thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me. Great chatting with you.